Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live Q&A for the taught postgraduate courses in theatre studies here at University of Glasgow. I'm delighted to be joined this morning by student representatives from each of our three programs, who I'm going to be introducing you to in a moment. My name's Graham Eatough. I'm the convener, the overall convener of all three programs, and I also lead our program in theatre and performance practices. So the three programs we have here at University of Glasgow at MLitt level, which is our master's level for postgraduate taught programs, are theatre and performance practices, playwriting and dramaturgy, and theatre studies. And we're going to be exploring each of those programs with Katra, Michaela, and Hayden today. But just by way of introduction, I'll just get them all to say hi, and then I'll explain a little bit, give you a brief overview of the programs. So, Katra, could we hear from you first?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Katra. I'm the Theatre and Performance Practices program, and as you can probably hear from my accent, I am coming from Boston originally.
Great, thanks, Katra. And Michaela?
Hi, I'm Michaela. I'm in the Theatre Studies program, and I'm also from the US.
Great. And Hayden?
I am Hayden from the Dramaturgy and Playwriting program, and I've realized that we're all three from the US of A.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, I just realized that as well. Yes, which isn't. I mean, you know, it's not unrepresentative. It's also not representative. So there's yes, that's chance rather than design. But maybe that would be a good thing to talk about, is what the sort of makeup of nations is on each of the programs. Yes, so we should put a pin in that for later. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about your experiences today. So just really briefly, I think the point of today is to hear from the three students who've got their experiences of studying on the programs. We want to hear questions from you, so please do post any questions you might have in the chat. Either we or our colleagues who are working in the background for this event will answer those as best we can. There'll also be the opportunity, hopefully at the end of this session, for you to ask the questions live if you prefer to do that, or just say hi. So yes, so please don't hesitate to ask anything that comes up. There is no question too basic. We're very interested to hear from you. There is, of course, information on each of the three programs available on the website. I'm sure somebody will put those links to the three program pages on the website in the chat. So that's really useful for the sort of factual basic information, but hopefully we're going to give you something a bit more personal this morning in terms of the personal experiences of the three students here. But yeah, just really briefly, just so we know what we're talking about. So the three programs, as I said before, theatre and performance practices, which I happen to lead. I suppose the key thing to say about that program is that it is, as the name suggests, orientated around practice, around making. So there are more opportunities. There are also opportunities for making performance and theatre on the other programs, but there are more opportunities, it would be fair to say, as part of the theatre and performance practices program. So it's really designed for people who are interested in developing their performance making practices, and indeed culminates the dissertation project at the end of that program. Doesn't have to be, but usually looks something like a performance. So even in the way it's assessed, it's orientated around theatre making in all its different definitions. We have playwriting and dramaturgy, which again hopefully gives the key information is this sort of twin tracked approach really to those writing and dramaturgical practices, and gives the students who study that program direct opportunities to write plays of varying lengths, and also to dramaturgically analyze text, or to develop dramaturgical projects. And that happens across the year, and you can specialize in various versions of that. And again, the final dissertation assessment for that program doesn't have to, but can look like a new play that the student writes, or a new dramaturgical project that they formulate. The third program is Theatre Studies, and that's a more, I suppose, in some senses, a more conventional portfolio program where you choose from the range, the students choose from the range of the different courses on offer across Theatre Studies, but also across our School of Culture and Creative Arts, and indeed the College of Arts within the university. So it's really a bespoke program that the student puts together themselves in terms of their different interests from the courses that are on offer across this bit of the institution. Yeah, so listen, that's just a really brief overview. Our student colleagues will give you some more insights, and do have a look online if you want the sort of more factual information about each of those programs. I'm going to turn, I don't want to say any more, because I think it's important to hear from the students we have here. So I'm going to come to Michaela first and ask you each in turn, but we'll start with Michaela. Michaela, what was your experience before you came here? What were you studying, and why did you choose Theatre Studies at University of Glasgow? If that's all right, to start with you.
Yeah, I kind of have like a windy background because I did start with an undergrad in theater and communication, but I was planning on doing my postgrad in theater at the University of Edinburgh in 2020. And as you all know, the pandemic liked to put a wrench in lots of plans. And so that program actually was disbanded like in the middle of waiting to see if we were going to be able to come back. And so then I kind of had to rethink things, and I knew I still wanted to come to Scotland. I still wanted to study here. And so I was just kind of figuring out how to do that, but I was waiting for a long time. There was still like 2 years before they would let us go. So I was like, I'm bored. I'll just get another undergrad while I'm waiting. So I got another undergrad in English Lit. And so I knew that would be the harder degree to get my master's in. So I was like, I'll do that one first, because that will be, let's get that out of the way. So I did that at Edinburgh, and then I was ready to have fun and do the nice degree here at Glasgow in Theatre Studies. So yeah, it was just a little bit windy, but exciting.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. And Katra, what about you? What were you doing before, and why did you choose Theatre and Performance Practices at Glasgow?
So I also had a windy path. I think a lot of us do. I was working in the wildlife conservation field. That was the majority of my career after graduating from undergraduate. I did study theater as an undergraduate, but I was primarily focused on environmental studies. So that is what I was doing prior to here. I was working at a zoo as a zoo educator. And I was really drawn to Scotland, I think initially because of my interest in wild spaces. Scotland has a lot of beautiful landscapes, and they're very committed to rewilding. So that's what originally piqued my interest. And then I did fortunately have the chance to visit, and just fell in love with the place. So I was really set on coming to Scotland. And then when I was doing research on postgraduate degrees, I found this program, and I was really interested in developing new work myself. And I was initially considering the playwriting track, but then when I found about the performance practices program, I was really interested in the idea of being able to experiment and rehearse throughout the year. So I really appreciated that hands-on approach, and that's what ultimately led me to shift to that program, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit, but that is what brought me here essentially.
Great, yeah. Yeah, and I hope we get a chance to describe how you've kept your zoological interests alive during your performance studies, which has been great to see. Hayden, let's hear from you.
I feel like my path is a little less windy.
Okay.
When I applied, I was still in my undergrad and I was getting my degree in creative writing on the English side, and then also theater performance. And in my undergrad, I knew I loved playwriting, and then I was getting into dramaturgy in my last year. So I wanted to do something that kind of combined the two. And this at the time, and I still believe is, maybe, don't quote me, but it was the only program I could find in a master's level that combined dramaturgy and playwriting, at least in the UK. And my partner is in the UK, so I wanted to kind of make my way over here eventually. And I felt like this was honestly the best program because it combined two interests that I really wanted to kind of further myself in.
Great, that's really helpful. I can see some questions coming through in the chat already, which maybe we can get onto straight away. So Hayden, if I can stick with you, we've had some questions in the chat about how practical the playwriting and dramaturgy program is. So it would be good to hear from you. Yeah, what opportunities have you had to write scripts, as it were, itself?
Yeah, so in playwriting and dramaturgy, we have like two main playwriting courses. So that's playwriting 1 and then playwriting 2. In playwriting 1, from my experience this year, it was a lot of like script analysis, and our final project was a 20-minute play. And then in playwriting 2, it was a little bit more hands-on in my experience. And you're grouped with a mentor, and you have like a few meetings with a mentor, and you work on a 60-minute roughly script. And then in, which I think just a few weeks ago, we had a workshop essentially where we had a director and a few actors come together, and then they read our scripts and gave us like amazing feedback. And honestly, I think that was like kind of the highlight of the practical side of it, is because you get people to come in and really kind of talk about the writing process and what of the script is working and what's not working. And then you can kind of sit back with the script and then go over it again and then put it back into the academia eventually.
Great. Yeah, people often describe that workshop weekend as one of the highlights of that program, just because you get to work with professional actors and a professional director. And this year, for the past few years, it's been Philip Howard, who's one of the UK's really top new writing directors. So that does hopefully provide some really useful professional perspective. And sorry, just because there was another question about the balance. So what would you say, and I might ask Katra the same question, what would you say the balance was in terms of the assessments? Somebody's asking the balance between, say, writing scripts and essays. So what in terms of the different assessments you've done across the year, can you talk a bit about that? What different types of assessments there've been? Hayden, why don't you start?
Yeah, I can go. With playwriting 2, the only assessment was the script. And I don't know if that's changing in the future, but for like our program, it was just the 60-minute script is your final assessment. Playwriting 1, we did have, to me, it was a script analysis essentially assignment. And that was our first assessment. And then the second assessment was that 20-minute script. So it was kind of like a half and half, at least in terms of the assessments. Before you did the script, you did a script analysis of another existing play.
Yeah, and I would say that's a fair indication really of the balance that we try to strike across most of those practice programs, is that there's definitely a practice assessment and there's probably some sort of supportive writing going on as well, whether that's a critical reflection on your practice or an analysis like the script analysis in playwriting 1. Katra, is that something you found? How have you found the balance between like the practical assessments and the more essay style assessments?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that as well. I would say they're usually on average 2 or 3 assignments per course that you're taking. And those tend to be written assignments. We've had group projects. They're very creative in nature, as you would imagine, in a theater program. But I do think there's a good balance. What I would say is I feel like I'm putting on 2 different hats in this program. I have my sort of a more academically focused hat where I'm able to choose topics in my assignments that align with my practice. So I would say that they really do complement each other. So although you are being assigned, and obviously you have assignments in this course, you're able to choose what you want to do with them. So I think the 2 fuse really nicely. So that's what I would say about, they're not as separate categories as you might think.
And Michaela, you're studying the Theatre Studies program, which again, depending on what you choose, can be more traditionally academic, I guess. I don't know if that's been your experience of it, or whether you tried to balance the sort of essay writing with the more practical side of things.
Yeah, I feel like maybe, not that I like went into this doing it wrong, but I did do a lot more of the like dramaturgy and playwriting courses. But like obviously like none of them were things I had to take. So it was like very much freedom on my part. I could pick and choose which ones I wanted to take. If I wanted to focus more dramaturgically, I could, or I didn't have to take playwriting 1 or playwriting 2, but I did choose to take playwriting 1. But then it like gave me freedom to take like applied theater as well, which like doesn't have the same kind of assessments. I feel like we did a blog post, which is a written work, but much looser than you would think of as like a normal essay. And again, yeah, lots of group projects that don't feel the same as an essay. They're much more creative in the way that we're thinking about things, especially like in dramaturgy, contemporary dramaturgical practices. That was like such a fun group project. Like just really thinking about how you can apply what you've learned in the course to like a piece of work, a production, making your own work. So it was really a good balance for me. But I, again, like as bespoke, I chose the courses. I knew what I wanted to do. So it just depends on what you're wanting to get out of the theatre studies course.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was just picking up again on something in the chat about sort of placements and industry connections, and I would say that is something that we work very hard at here and pride ourselves on, is trying to really take advantage of our close relationships with the theatre industry, particularly in Scotland, obviously. So my background is actually as a theatre maker, theatre director, as well as teaching here. There's a couple of other members of staff in a similar situation. But that's a good example. So Michaela just mentioned the applied theatre course that she's been studying this year, and that is a course that's run at the Citizens Theatre, which is one of Glasgow's main performance spaces and a very sort of significant theatre in the whole of the UK. And it's run by their education and outreach director, who happens to be an alumna of the university and did her PhD here, actually. So, and then she's gone on to occupy this very senior position in the Citizens, and we now run a course in collaboration with them, which is all about how theatre can work in community contexts and educational contexts. And so, yeah, it's great that Michaela's been able to do that. But that's just one example, really, of how we try and embed learning with the sector, with the industry across all of the courses. So Hayden mentioned professional playwrights and actors coming into the debating dramaturgy, to the dramaturgy and playwriting program. Katra's about to start her dissertation project with a professional mentor. So again, we have on theatre and performance practices, we have professionals coming in who are really nothing to do with the university otherwise. They're theatre makers who come in to advise our students on their theatre making practice rather than the academic side. So yeah, so that's something that we try and do across the programs. And I was really pleased to see in the comments somebody saying a shout out to the Introduction to Playwriting Future Learn course, which for anybody out there who's interested in playwriting and dramaturgy, or indeed playwriting generally, whatever program you're looking at, do have a look at that. So that's on this platform called the Future Learn platform, and it's an introductory course that we put together with Playwright Studios Scotland, who are one of our close industry partners who we work with every year. And it's a great way to, just to find out, really. It's for beginners. So to find out whether you're interested in playwriting and to develop some skills in that area. It's ideal for people who are looking to do the Playwriting and Dramaturgy MLitt by way of an introduction. And it's led by one of Scotland's premier playwrights, Douglas Maxwell, who's a friend of the university. So please do have a look at that. Okay, let's move on to so we've talked a little bit about the options that you've taken generally. I just want you to pull out maybe in terms of skills. Somebody was asking about what you're hoping to take forward from these programs into future employment. But I suppose by way of opening up that conversation, could you talk about what skills you think you've developed, or even knowledge more broadly you think you've developed, maybe some key skills during your studies? What has it allowed you to do that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, I suppose, in terms of skills development? And let's start with Michaela.
I have, I guess my undergrad, my background is more in performance. So learning the dramaturgical practices, I felt like was a big step for me. I just got so much out of that course. To be clear, all of the courses for me were option courses. Not all of the other courses are like that, but the Theatre Studies course only had 2 required courses, and that's changing, I think, for next term, so that there's only 1 required course.
That's right, yeah.
So then there's lots of choices, options, like they were saying. It's really you get to choose exactly how you want it to look. So that the Contemporary Dramaturgical Practices course, I think, was one of my favorite courses that I took. Just every lecture was a different subject in dramaturgy and was led by the guest lecturers, and so you really got a full view of what dramaturgy is and how it can be used in the field. It was just really all-encompassing and very practical. And the other one that I think is really helpful for the future is the placement, which I've just started. I'm at the National Theatre of Scotland, and I had my first day yesterday, so I don't have tons of feedback to give you, but I do know that it is going to be great. And that it will be really helpful. I'm doing that in sort of a marketing and communications area, and I hope to stay in that area in my career in the future. So I know that will be building good skills for me.
Right.
It's just really practical, hands-on.
And we should say, Michaela, shouldn't we? So the placements. So you chose to do the placement course, which I think is available to all 3 programs, and you suggested that was an area you were interested in, marketing communications. And then we went away and we talked to our different industry partners and managed to find somewhere that could support those interests, which in your case was the National Theatre of Scotland. So even in that individual course, there's the room for your own interests to be developed. Yeah, good. Katra, what about you in terms of skills that you think you've learned, and maybe with an eye to what you can do with them after? I don't know.
Yeah, I really agree with Michaela. I think you develop a lot of skills throughout the courses. We mentioned the group projects before, and I think that's been a really helpful framework for developing those collaborative skills, but also touching upon what Michaela already mentioned as well, you do have a lot of different theater makers and academics who come to each of the classes. So I think each class you gain a really unique perspective on a very specific practice. So I think, and that's just been really helpful in terms of learning about the really large range of ways that you can be a theater maker. We mentioned the Citizens Theater before, and I think one of the projects that stood out to me was a playwright who had a long family history at the Citizens Theater, and she used her PhD to preserve some of the history, because the Citizens Theater was remodeled and it was closed for a very long time. She used a really unique text-based approach to preserve that history. And so that's just one example of the really unique practices that each of the people have when they come to the course. I think, again, as Michaela touched upon, I think this gives you a glimpse of all the different kinds of ways that you can be involved in theater in really tangible ways, and you can go up to them after the class and chat with them and connect with them. So I think that's been probably one of the most tangible ways in which we're able to gain that experience. And I'm also starting my placement as well. And yes, just starting, but it's been great so far. I'm assistant directing. And I will add on to that, because it is a course that you're choosing to take, you reflect on some of your goals prior to the process. And I think that's been really valuable, because when I have done assistant directorships before, you sort of are thrust into the process and you might not necessarily critically reflect on what you want to get out of the process. I think that's been helpful, that framework.
Good. Hayden, what about you? What skills have you managed to pick up during the year? Not that it's over yet. You have a significant bit of the year to go, but have you started to think about how you might apply some of these skills afterwards?
Yeah, I think the skill that I kind of came in here with a little bit was like dramaturgical analysis, but I wasn't really quite sure what dramaturgy was. Like I was like just dipping my toes into it in my last like few months at KU. And one thing I definitely did learn is dramaturgy in the States versus dramaturgy in the UK. And I don't know if the rest of Europe is kind of like that as well, is really different. And the States, I was always kind of, I was applying stuff to like existing works, whereas here I've kind of gotten to understand it with dramaturgy and work in progress and like new work, and how to like really flesh out ideas with playwriting. And so I think that's one thing that I'm honestly so glad I'm getting to learn, is how to kind of combine dramaturgy and playwriting a lot more. And I want to kind of take that into my future, I guess, is like how I'll say it, because I'm kind of interested in going into publishing eventually, and I think that might help me in my pathway.
Great.
Like editorial work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we should say that, shouldn't we, in terms of dramaturgy specifically? And I think it does vary from country to country, the definitions, even from person to person, frankly. But that's one of the exciting things about dramaturgy, and we do tend to take what we call an expanded view, an expanded set of definitions around dramaturgy, which of course does encompass the traditional text-based dramaturgy, but opens it up to more sort of, yes, process-orientated ideas of dramaturgy. Good. There's a good question in the chat here. Coming from abroad, outside the UK, was it very different to adjust to a UK program? Katra, did you find it different? You had experience in the UK anyway, right?
Yes, but it's definitely been an adjustment. The system itself is different. The length of the semesters are different, and just the way that things are evaluated is different as well. So yeah, there were definitely some adjustments throughout the process. But I think you're guided throughout the expectations are very clear, and there are often a lot of sessions where the professors will go through those learning expectations, and especially for the assignments, debrief them further. So that certainly helped in terms of getting my brain around the way that they the way that they mark things, the way that I think one of the concrete examples is that you are expected to really spell out your understanding in a way that in the US they often don't want that. They sort of want maybe, I don't want to say more nuanced, that sounds rude. No, they just want sort of a different approach to it, whereas here they really want you to demonstrate that you have this specific understanding. So there are certain stylistic things that are absolutely different. But again, I think there's a lot of support provided in that area. And you can always come to any of the professors if you have any doubts about those expectations.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah. What about you, Michaela? Because you have previous master's experience in the UK as well. I don't know whether.
Yeah, so I did feel like the two programs were pretty similar in structure in the UK, but this one's more fun. The English lit is just so serious and so strict. So yeah, it was definitely harder and just more rigorous in terms of like I was reading like multiple novels a week and then having to like analyze them. So it's just much better to be with people that all understand like theater and theater making and like that desire. We all get along well too, so we're with each other outside of the course regularly. Just makes it a bit easier to acclimate, I think, when you're with people that you get on with, especially. But also I feel like the structures, I mean, the systems are all different than the US, but I feel like it's the same level of acclimating that you would do for any other program. Like you're just getting used to the professors and getting used to the structures and like finding your way. And then obviously, like Ketra said, like you're able to ask questions and get help if you need it. So it's not too stressful. Yeah, just finding what works and what doesn't. I know at Edinburgh, I didn't have like assessments until the finals, and that was quite stressful because I didn't have any way to kind of gauge my progress. But here we have like smaller assignments that have been good for me because then I can like see what is needed to change before I get to the final assignments kind of thing.
Great. What about you, Hayden? Have you noticed any cultural differences between studying here and studying elsewhere?
I definitely have, and that comes in the terms of how the weeks are kind of structured. In my undergrad, I had pretty much, if I had a class on a Monday, I had that same class on a Wednesday, and if I had a class on a Tuesday, I had that same class on a Thursday. So I would have like 2 classes for one course each week. And here it's a lot less courses each semester, and you're only really on campus for one section each week for that. And that was something that really took me a while to adjust to. I felt like I had so much downtime when really I didn't have a lot of downtime. It was just, I needed to be doing a lot more of my studies like on my own rather than like doing it in class. And so that was like the big transition for me in that first few months, trying to get used to that new system. And then the grading system was a little different as well. I know like it's still like an A to an F, but it's like the structure of like A1s to A5s that took me a while to also kind of understand that breakdown.
Yes, I think that is, to be fair, I think that is quite unique, our grading structure. But I think that's really important what you say about actually the difference between master's study and undergraduate study. And I think this is probably true not just in the UK but elsewhere, but that transition from more directed study to more self-directed study, and that is something students at master's level talk about a lot, is navigating, negotiating that shift really, and taking responsibility for the learning that, you know, within the framework that's provided, but yeah, moving away from that sort of undergraduate, more sort of hand holding. I don't like that expression, but you know what I mean, that sort of regular contact. Okay, good. There's a question here about the maximum number of students we're accepting for each program. So it varies. And I can't actually quite remember the numbers, but roughly speaking, for theatre and performance practices, just because it's a practical program and that it's quite resource intensive in terms of access to spaces, which we could talk about a little bit as well. We have different theatre and performance spaces here, but that's usually about 15 to 18 will be the maximum, I would say. And I think there's 10 this year, 10 this year. Playwriting and dramaturgy tends to be a bit bigger. That's usually in the low 20s, which I think it pretty much is this year. And theatre studies tends to be smaller. And I think our cap And how many is it this year? It's like 4 this year or something.
There's 4 of us, yeah.
4, but I think the cap is probably around 10. So if that gives you an idea, and that's really just so we can give the students, you know, the attention that we feel they need, and also give them access to resources. Really, that's why those caps exist. I wanted to ask you about Glasgow and about studying here and like extracurricular stuff. So you've all been quite good at going to see things and taking advantage of what Glasgow has to offer. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that? Maybe even like student society stuff. I don't know if any of you have done any of that, but Glasgow is a place to study in the University of Glasgow outside of the courses. Michaela, what about you?
Yeah, I'm not in any student societies. There are loads though. There are so many worth going to the, like, where they, I don't know what it's called, but when they show them all off. But I go to see a lot of theatre. I live right down the road from Oranmore, so I go to Play Pint a Pint pretty regularly, which is just a lovely lunchtime theatre place that has new work. So it's just a good way to see new work. They also do like scratch nights and things like that. So if you ever want to like submit your piece to them, you can do that as well. I've also seen a lot at the Citizens Theatre and the Tron, and because I was living in Edinburgh last term, I go over there sometimes and see things at the Lyceum and the Traverse as well. So I'm trying to watch as much as possible because I feel like I love it, and it also improves my practice. I've also done some volunteering recently at the SITs, and I'm in a small performance with Katra in partnership with the Huntarian. So, you know, we hang out a lot. We all like each other. So
great, very good. Katra, what about you?
I'm also not a part of any student societies, but yes, definitely make the effort to try to see work outside of your coursework. As Michaela mentioned, Play Pint a Pint is always a really great option. It's super close to campus. There's a new play on every week, and it is all new work. There are a lot of scratch nights though. So I did recently go to another scratch night, and it was lovely. It was just 2 or 3 actors reading a bunch of different short plays. You find some really interesting work, and obviously you can connect with them there. You can chat with them. It's just, we're all artists, and you can seek out the people that you really resonate with, and you'll find those artists everywhere. Everyone's really friendly. Even if someone is appearing, it seems to be super high up in their career, people are really approachable. So just seek out your interests and connect with them, because there's so much theater in Glasgow. I feel like the sky's the limit, really.
Great, thank you. And Hayden, what's your experience been?
Yeah, also not in any groups. And then my volunteering is not like theater based, it's just a bookstore. So I'm kind of not really like connected to a whole lot of theater in Glasgow, but I do, whenever I have the time, make sure I go see some new shows. And Play Pint a Pint, as Michaela has already mentioned, is an amazing venue and it's amazing organization. And but also from like my experience in the States, it was really kind of hard for me as someone like in Kansas to go see a lot of like new touring shows or just touring shows. And it's a lot easier for me to just be able to actually go to London and go see a lot of shows in like 1 week. And so like that is something that also led me to kind of decide to be here, was the availability to get to other cities to see other city shows.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to pick up a couple of these questions from the chat. Is it okay to apply with an unrelated bachelor and a few short courses? We do take into consideration, I mean, there are the guidelines on the website about entry requirements, but one of the things we take into consideration is other experience. So say you've not got a directly related degree, but you do have experience of theatre making or playwriting or whatever, you know, related experience to the program you want to go to, then we would definitely be able to look at that? And are there any open access plays by University of Glasgow students? Well, we do have quite a, there's a kind of long list of students who've gone on to write plays in professional context. Unfortunately, they're not usually open access because they're professional, you know, they've been either published or performed professionally. Yeah, there's actually resources on that. The Introduction to Playwriting Future Learn platform has resources of lots of plays by alumni that you could look at. And what was this one? What are the courses you can pick from on Theatre Studies? Well, they're quite broad. They're listed on the website, so do have a look at the Theatre Studies page on the website. But there's many courses. Michaela could just give us a quick rundown of the courses you've studied, maybe, just to give an idea.
Yeah, so the choice courses that I picked, the options, I picked Contemporary Dramaturgical Practices, which we said went through like lots of different subjects, facets of dramaturgy, just different areas of it by different guest lecturers. So really comprehensive and practical, and then culminating in a group project and research trail, which just really helped me to think about it for how I would use it in practice. So it was just really able to like not just learn about it, but then put it into practice pretty well. Playwriting 1, which I think Hayden talked about, just like the mix of play analysis and then writing as well. I also was in the applied theater course at the SITS, which just talked about different methods of applied theater. And again, there was a group project in that in which we like proposed our own applied theater project. So yeah, they're really good about finding ways for people to put the theories into practice. And then I obviously have the placement as well, which again, you have to choose to do. And it's very, bespoke. You can really go into it deciding whatever you want to do. You'll be like, Graham, I have these ideas for my placement, make it happen. And then he's wonderful. He's like a magic fairy and just poof, then you have your placement.
I'm glad that's been your experience.
Yeah, I tell everyone, like, oh, Graham's so good.
Fantastic. Listen, there's we're slight. Oh no, we've still got a bit of time left actually. But what I wanted to ask you was, I don't know how easy this is to answer, but if there was some general tips, right, for people who are applying or thinking of applying, and I suppose specifically, is there something that you didn't know when you were coming into all of this that you wish you had have known? And Hayden, I'm going to start with you.
So anything that we wish we knew coming in and then we didn't know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could.
Or if anybody else has got anything.
Yeah, I can hop in.
Go on then, Catra.
Go on then. Yeah, I would say, I think something, at least in our program, we've been asked to really define what our practice is. So specifically what we're interested in. And I think that's been something that's been a really pleasant surprise. I think, as I mentioned before, I was coming from a different field, coming from the conservation field. I did get a lot of experience in practicing theater as an undergraduate, and then I sought out those opportunities outside of my work. So I do recommend, as you mentioned, Graham, try to get as much experience as you can in that. But I would say that, yeah, I sort of felt that I would have to be apologizing or justifying my interests, and I cannot express how much of the opposite experience that has been. I think I can speak for myself, but it has felt that everyone's interests have really been embraced. So I would say, if you are applying to the program, don't be afraid to really lean into what you're interested in. Even if it seems really oddly specific or just odd in general, I think you'll really be embraced with that interest. So just yeah, really dig down and reflect on what interests you specifically and bring that to the program. It will be very welcomed.
I think that speaks to something really important, actually. It's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But that idea that you get out in proportion to what you put in, I think it's particularly true of master's study, isn't it? And possibly master's study that revolves around practice as well. So coming in, expecting to make decisions about, you know, and to express your interests in whatever particular field of study you're following. I think that really works at master's level. That to build an experience around your particular interests, I think. What about Michaela? Any thoughts on any of that?
I mean, I totally agree, especially like with my program, like it was all down to me and what I wanted to get out of it. So really you have to think about what you intend for your course. If you're going to do the theatre studies, like you want to make the course that you put together work for you. I mean, whatever you want to get out of it is what you need to arrange. So I'm excited for the next people, because if I could have taken one more class, I knew which one it would be. And so I'm glad that like they don't have to take that required class now. And so they have that option to take that one more class. But yeah, there was just so many courses. It was so hard to decide. So I think that says a lot about what we have on offer, and just the options and things that you can, the ways that you can organize it to get whatever you want out of it. So yeah, just knowing yourself and knowing what you want.
Good. Anything to add to that, Hayden?
I actually do now. I, coming into the program, also had like a little misconception that it was going to be a lot of just playwriting. I knew like there was going to be dramaturgy elements to it, but I didn't know that it was really going to be a lot more academia than there's playwriting in some sections. And I wish I just kind of had more interest in academia or more like ideas to kind of work through. I essentially gotten into a lot of like drag studies while here, but I've not like really been into that before. And so that was something that was like, it was amazing for me to discover, but I also wish I kind of knew stuff I wanted to come into with more interest rather than just playwriting or like wanting to know about dramaturgy.
I think that's a really useful point, though, is that these all three programs exist within a university context. It's an academic context. You know, they may end up being vocational for some people, in that lots of our graduates go on to make theatre or to be playwrights, but they are supported, that whatever that practice is supported by this academic framework that you would expect at a leading research university. So I think that's a good point. And of course, the course that's common to all three programs is the research methods course, which is quite a standard master's course that you'll find in most universities, which introduces you to those academic fundamentals around research, whether that's research through practice or more conventional book-based academic research. So I think that is useful to say that there is an academic framework around these three programs. Terrific. I think we're pretty much towards the end of our time, unless there's any more questions in the chat. I can't see any immediately. Or any final comments or thoughts that you wanted to pass on to prospective students? Any tips that you might have to share about your studies here? Or maybe we've covered everything.
I had one last tip to add. I would say try to connect with previous students if you can. I did find someone through LinkedIn, which was a funny, I know sometimes LinkedIn, it can be hard to find people, but I did find someone who was previously living in Boston and now she was living in Scotland. And I know not everyone has the chance to visit, but I did visit before I applied to the program, and I was able to meet up with her and gain her perspective. But even just connecting with them online, again, people are really friendly, and I think that gives you the best perspective and those insights into the program is just by speaking to someone who has attended.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, if you can manage that. And there are ways, like if you're in or around Glasgow, there are events that you can come along to. There's a play reading event, there's a practices research projects sort of performance event in the end of July. I appreciate not everybody's able to access those, but that's a good way of getting a flavour of the course. You should also get in touch with me, and via me, the individual programme conveners, because we can provide the programme handbooks, for example, that will give you a bit more detail on this year's study, which is roughly be the same next year. So yeah, follow up with us if you're interested. We've got a final question here from somebody. Does anybody work alongside their studies? I mean, I know students do generally work. I don't know if you three individually want to share anything. Hayden, you're nodding.
Yeah, I just do retail part-time. So I think with me, it's like 10 to 16 hours a week. But one thing I would say for international students to keep in mind if you're going into like anything in the theater sector, with visas, like with my visa, I'm limited to 20 hours working each week. And there are certain jobs, like you can't do freelance work and get paid for it. And so that's like one thing to keep in mind. If you do want to be working in theater alongside the degree, make sure that it goes with like your visa, or someone else help me. Like, yeah, just make sure.
Yeah, those requirements. Yeah, the restrictions. Yeah. No, that's a good point. Actually, there are restrictions, but yeah, I would say, I don't know about the majority, but many of our students across all different levels, but including masters, do work to work part time. But there are restrictions if you're on a visa. That's absolutely right. Okay, I think we might wrap up there unless anybody's got any final thoughts. But I'd just like to say thank you so much to Katra, Hayden and Michaela for sparing your time. You're all about to go into your dissertation projects, the culmination of your degrees. So I wish you all the best with that. And thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. And thanks to everybody who's been joining us online. I know this now gets posted on YouTube for people to watch in the future as well. And don't hesitate to get in touch if you are interested in any of the three programs, and we can give you further information. There's also lots of information on the website as well. All right, thanks very much, everybody. Take care.